Okay. Hello, everyone, and welcome to the BME Life. So today we have a very special guest. This is Stacy. She's a high school student, and she wants to know about biomedical engineering. You're a senior, right? So
Yes.
you're in that specific year where you really just have to make up your mind. And it's so frustrating. The anxiety is overloading, but yeah, so she just reached out and wanted to have a conversation to know if BME is good for her. So thank you, Daisy, for being here and preparing all your questions.
No, thank you. Just to kind of start off introducing myself. Well, I'm a high school senior. I'm in the current process of applying for colleges, and it's pretty stressful because you know how in the application they kind of ask you, oh, what do you want to study?
Hmm.
Um, and in the beginning, since middle school, my mom has been in the field of like quality insurance. And I always met her network and they were all engineers. So I was like, I want to be an engineer too, you know?
Hmm.
And from there, I've always had my mindset on mechanical engineering. And then my high school, it's actually a vocational or a technical school. And it kind of gives me a chance to take an engineering class. And
Hmm.
from that engineering shop program, it kind of goes over all types of engineering from mechanical to civil, architecture, electrical, coding. And I've noticed that I was more interested in mechanical. And
Hmm.
then once I hit my junior year, senior year, my teacher hit me with opportunity do a competition called Virginia on Talent Search. And I
Hmm.
had to kind of think of a project of what to do. And from there, I thought about my grandma because my grandma has been sick with diabetes since she was 35. And
Hmm.
she went through dialysis process and she had to do a kidney transplant. And I kind of took her journey of being in a dialysis center. She was uncomfortable all the time. So from that experience, I was able to think of a biomedical embrace to
Hmm.
make for her, but also patients like her. And from there, I kind of got interest into the biomedical industry.
Wow, no, that's great. I mean, that's awesome. I didn't know that, but I think that's really the core of someone who decides to pursue BME. Most people do have like either themselves or a loved one that they just want to help because of some disease or condition, and or maybe you've been exposed to the medical field all your life. So yeah, I think that's already a sign that you may be really going towards that path, and I think that's in the end the best part of BME, that everything you learn is about how are you going to help people have a better quality of life. And not that you couldn't do that with other engineerings, because you could eventually, be a mechanical and just go to the biomed industry. But in biomedical engineering, you really do put that emphasis in the medical field, and you're the link between engineers and doctors, really. And I actually found this out recently, just a little bit of history of how BME even started. Because back then it was really most electrical, mechanical engineers creating these medical devices, but they obviously have to talk to the doctors and the people that are actually doing surgeries or implanting these devices. And there was always that missing, like there was always that gap in between engineers and doctors. And I think the field of biomedical engineering really is coming in to fill that gap. um, so yeah, with that background, and actually, would you mind sharing a little bit about that experience you had in pharma as well?
Yeah, so going into my senior year during the summer, the the topic of job came up because I'm 18 and financially, I was like, I want to build up my credit and all the adult stuff. And so
Mhm.
my mom actually works in a pharmaceutical, and I got the opportunity to go into the same pharmaceutical, and I submitted my resume and I got in. And initially, it was during the beginning of the pandemic,
Mhm.
and they needed someone to take temperatures and clean, and then not clean, but kind of fill in the supplies like the gloves and all the important materials. And then from there, they allowed me to go into the production floor where the medicine is being kit.
Mhm.
And slowly, I became temperature girl into a production technician. And from there, I saw how I got opportunities to go into the lines where the medicine were actually made, the powder, and processed into bottles. Then from the bottles into the kitting lines where you put in the
Mhm.
boxes and all the little tools. And so from there, I also got to meet many people, engineers that work the kind of like the lines and the machines they have there. And I got into the medicine. I love medicine.
Mhm.
And I kind of just liked how, like, for example, my mom, she's a quality assurance, and I saw how she's very particular with how the medicine is going to be sent out to the customers.
Mhm.
And that kind of just led me to be more interested in BME. And also, I met one of my mom's bosses. He is a biomedical engineer, but he has his PhD. And from there, I kind of saw how he worked, his work ethic, his educational background. I was like, wow, I want to be like him.
That's awesome. No, you definitely, have a lot of good experience, and I don't want to say advantaged because some people might take it wrong, but I think you
Yeah,
do have a lot of good advantage and like just a lot of a good solid network, because of your mom, and that's really good.
yeah,
It can definitely take you places wherever you want to go. So I think that's great. And that experience itself is like so valuable because you're just in high school and you're already experiencing these things. So I think that's great. So I guess we can go ahead and start with your questions. And actually, just before we go ahead, I'm sorry. I just want to say hi to everyone who is watching. We do have a lot of viewers joining. So if you're also a high school student and are wondering if you should do BME, this is great. Daisy has a lot of great questions. So we're gonna go ahead and just start with them.
yeah. Just start off to say that I'm very grateful and privileged to have those experiences. I don't want to have that come off the wrong way. And no one gets these type of opportunities if you don't put yourself out there.
Right.
And I just try my best to be like, oh, take that, take this,
Yeah.
even though the future is kind of scary, but fun.
Yeah.
Um, Kind of starting off, my main question for this biomedical engineering studying going into college is math and physics. And math, I'd say I struggled a lot from middle school to high school as math got harder. And
Mhm.
currently, math is my least favorite. Anatomy is my favorite. I love it. And do you think I've heard that if you're gonna go, there's a stigma behind engineering where you have to be in higher math classes in order to get in, or engineering you have to have a good, you have to be strong, you have to love math. And so I was wondering if that's true.
May I ask, what's the highest math course you've taken so far?
Right now I'm taking pre-calculus.
Pre-calculus. Okay, just wanted to know. Just to give you a little bit of background on me, I went to a very, very small high school. Like my graduating senior class was 24 people. With that being said, my high school definitely didn't have a lot of opportunities for like um taking like dual enrollment or like AP credit and things like that. Um, so in high school, I only went up to college algebra and I took pre-calculus in college. So you're already, with that little advantage of having had pre-calculus, and like I know a lot of people can actually have calculus in high school if I think if they wanted to. But okay, so the question is, can you go through BME not being so strong at math? And it's hard to answer because I do love math and I enjoyed math. It was like my favorite class in high school. But in BME, there's definitely a lot of classes that don't have math, because you do have to learn more, or some of your classes expose you more to like the cell and tissue engineering kind of fields of BME, biomaterials. Those things don't really have math. It's mostly learning biology, learning about cells, how to culture them, how to grow them, and experimental procedures and things like that. But there are definitely a lot of classes that do have math. But I always tell people, because believe it or not, I've gotten this question a lot, which in the beginning I was kind of impressed, of how people who are considering engineering are like, oh, is it okay if maybe I don't like math that much? Because it's funny because I chose engineering because I liked math. Uh, but I've realized that, and I saw this in one of your questions, like right now at my job, I rarely use math, like rarely. And if I do, it's like basic adding and subtracting, maybe multiplying. Like it's nothing crazy, but it obviously depends on, the kind of job that you get. Um, your classes, again, definitely do have math, and because it is engineering, and but I think you can, uh, pass your classes if you just really put effort into it. BME is definitely the engineering with less math, I think, because I've talked to, well, I know for sure it's less than chemical engineers do. Um, So if you want to do engineering and maybe you don't like math that much, I think BME is good because you do have to split yourself between these engineering classes that do have math in their core, but then you also have the science, like the learning biology, anatomy, physiology, and really just emphasizing in how your body works. Um, so I think you can definitely do it without loving math. Like, maybe it will be a little hard. I mean, I think any engineering degree, I mean, a lot of degrees are hard anyway. You just really have to, especially in the beginning, there's a lot of struggle. Like, I'm not gonna lie, in the beginning of, I think every degree, you struggle because you're thrown into this new world that's like college or university. And there is a struggle, but I think with time, you just learn how to learn, if that makes sense. And I found that to be true every single semester. Like every semester, I had a class that I felt was so tough, and at the end of the semester I would look back and be like, hey, well, I passed, so we're good. Um so yeah, a short answer is there is math. There's definitely a lot of math, um but most classes are not like super intense math. I mean, I took like my math classes that I took were up to calculus 2, and you're already in pre-calculus, so that's just, two more classes. I did take calculus 3 because it was an elective, and I actually found it to be easier than calculus 2. And I took it because that's what people said. Um, there's also these other classes that are under engineering, but I would say they're very math heavy, which they're called like linear algebra and differential equations. And that's a lot of algebra. Really, I think even though they start calling it calculus and things like that, I think algebra is really like the foundation of everything, because you learn how to, I don't know, move things in your mind.
Yeah.
Um, but Yeah, I'm not sure if that helps too much. But there is math. I don't want to lie and say no, there's not math, but there is quite a bit of math almost in every class. But I think as long as, the first time that you get the hang of it, everything is gonna be easier from then on. It's like it's just like repetitive, like your usage of math. Like you're gonna get to this level of like using, I don't know, like integrals and derivatives and things like that. And then you're gonna stop there and you're gonna use that for every class. So that skill is gonna help you in every class, and it doesn't become too hard by then.
No, but
So,
yeah, that really helped me kind of I'm not trying to run away from math. If I
mhm,
were trying to run away from math, I would have probably went into the medical field or did
right.
something without math.
Mhm.
Um, I've noticed like in the comments they were also asking about physics. How was your physics experience? Because that one class I took in high school, I cried and like I got like a B minus.
Yeah, physics is actually also not my strength. That like okay, so I only took two physics, like physics, general physics 1 and 2. I was this close to failing physics 1. Like I was so close to failing. Like I'm not even kidding. It was a miracle that I passed. But with that being said, I want to say that a lot of people do end up failing at least one class during college, and it might feel like the end of the world, but it's not. So I just wanted to put that little parentheses out there. But yeah, I physics 1 was definitely pretty hard for me. But then, for example, my sister is studying biology and she had to take physics 1 as well. And she aced it like crazy, and she's not good at math, but it's because it really depends on your professor. And that's something that you should be aware of if you haven't heard that already. Um, Choosing a good professor is really important, especially in classes like that, like physics, where a lot of people take that. So there's a lot of professors teaching it. I would really recommend that, you do some research in like what professors are good and which ones are not. Because that plays a big role in like how the class is gonna go. Some professors can make it really hard, and some others are just nicer and think of you and don't want to ruin your life. So, uh, but with that being said, physics 1 was definitely harder than physics 2, in my opinion, because you already have this background knowledge. Oh, there's my sister. She aced physics 1 and 2. Okay. Um, so yeah, it really depends on your professor, um, and also your school, because I know every BME program is different across universities, even in the US. Like it really depends. Like my school really focused on that like cell and tissue engineering side, so we definitely had more like biology classes rather than like, I don't know, electronics and things like that, where like other programs really focus on learning programming and electronics. So that's something that you should also maybe start thinking about, like not, especially in BME because it's so new. Some schools are barely starting, some others have a little bit longer with their BME programs, but they definitely do like differ across universities. So if there's one particular field that maybe you're interested in, I would look at, okay, what does this university focus on? Am I gonna enjoy that? Um, but I mean, I don't want you to worry too much either.
Yeah.
Like if you want to stay home or you want to go to MIT, and there's only one BME program, so what do I do? I mean, there's a lot of things you have to consider and just weighing like what's important for you. So yeah, that was kind of going off the topic, but just wanted to throw it in there. But yeah, I only had two physics and that was it. And I guess why I said that is because maybe some other classes will have uh, more physics involved. I mean, I'm sorry, not classes, but degrees. Like maybe some other degrees will have more physics classes. But from my understanding, and I've talked to chemical engineers too, and they've only had to take two physics. So I think that's just like the general idea of BME. I mean, of engineerings. Like most engineers just take physics one and two.
What are some study tips that you recommend for math or physics in general?
Yeah, that's a great question. And I definitely learned this the hard way. I would really recommend that when you're studying for classes that have problems, like math and physics, maybe even chemistry, whenever you're studying for that, like test yourself with like the problem that's like empty, like just the question or the problem, and don't look at your notes. Like test yourself like if you were taking the test right there and then, because it might be hard, but then you're gonna realize what you don't know. Because a mistake that I did a lot, and it's probably the reason why I almost failed physics one, is that I would study the problems, but they were already solved. Like I would look at my notes and it was like 2 plus 2 equals 4, and I would be like, oh, okay, yeah, that makes sense. And then I would just skim through it and be like, yeah, yeah, that makes sense. And then I would get to the test and I would have 2 plus 2 equals. And I'm like, oh my gosh, how did he do that? Like, and like, so I think it's really important to just test yourself. I know it takes longer, but you do realize where you're lacking. What is it that you maybe don't understand right now? So that's something like that's one thing that really, really helped me. Another thing is just studying with friends. And this might work for some and not others. And honestly, most of the times I preferred to study on my own, especially if it was like memorizing stuff like in biology related classes and things like that. But when it comes to math problems or like physics and other like, actual problems that you have to solve, I think studying with friends is really good because if you get stuck somewhere, then they might know, or like together you can solve something better than you could on your own. So I think studying with friends is good. Maybe not always because you can get distracted by talking and doing other stuff. But I think that's also a very important thing to find that support group um, during your, you know, career. And obviously you're going to be new to this university and maybe you won't have your friends there, or maybe only in some classes. But I think it's really important to do find those support groups in friends, or if not, just like tutoring centers. And you'll see, because I actually went to two universities. The first one I went to had a really good tutoring center, and I loved it because they were very helpful. But then the second one that I went to, they were not helpful at all. Like, so you'll get to see if what helps you and what doesn't. And it's really just a matter of trying, like trying everything and like exposing yourself to different ways you can study, and then just pick up what's good for you and what's not.
Going into more the degree and the future outlook of BME, from my
Hmm.
research, and everyone's entitled to their own opinion, but I've heard that BME is not a good career to study because it's new and that it's better off to choose some other type of engineering and then go into the biomedical field.
Hmm.
So, how does the future look for BME? And yeah.
Yeah, that's a great question. And I mean, you're not wrong. A lot of people uh, don't really believe in BME. And I've actually heard a podcast like a month ago that it was literally titled "Don't Major in BME." Um,
Yeah,
so
I saw
someone,
that video.
yeah.
I think I know what you're talking about.
Yeah. So as someone who majored in BME, you obviously, like it's kind of like a warning sign, and I don't want to push people into something that they'll regret later. But mm, I want to say I love BME, and if I could go back with what I know and what I hear now, I wouldn't change my degree because I mean, just the first point I want to cover is that yes, you could study mechanical or electrical engineering, but those degrees are not gonna expose you to the medical applications, like which they don't have to. Okay, like if you want to learn more of the heavy engineering and like learn about mechanical systems and thermodynamics and I don't know what else, sure, do mechanical engineering and then you can go into like the medical field and you can design medical devices. Yeah, like you'll have that knowledge of design and maybe some software and not programming, SolidWorks and things like that. But I think I really enjoyed BME because everything I looked at was with an emphasis in like medical applications. And you said that the class that you enjoy the most right now is anatomy. And I definitely also, enjoyed just learning about the body. It's like very interesting to me. So I don't think I would have personally enjoyed my degree as much if I had done mechanical engineering, for example, because it's just so broad and you learn more about the engineering side, yes. But I had a lot of fun learning about the body and cells and medical applications, and things like that. So maybe you could say like, well, yeah, you had fun in your degree, but what happens next? Like, is it worth it? I know that BME is relatively new, yes, and I've definitely heard of people saying, "Oh, well, this like company like that makes medical devices, they're not even hiring BMEs. They want to hire only mechanicals or electricals." You'll definitely come across those comments. Um, but I can tell you that that every person in my class of BME, I think everyone literally has a job now, or if they don't, they're in graduate school. And um, so I think that's very important. One, because we're in the middle of a global pandemic. And if we can get jobs now, we can get jobs later. And actually, someone commented on one of our videos like recently. They were like, I'm so salty. I studied BME and like I haven't gotten a job yet. And I replied like, did you just graduate? Because if you did, like, I mean, that's fine, like, but I think the problem or the key is that yes, there's definitely more jobs for mechanical engineers because they can go into any field. Like they can go into airspace, they can go into I mean, I don't know. Um, but they can go into anything really, even the medical field. But BMEs, they're like, well, there's less jobs for BMEs. Well, yeah, because BMEs are concentrated in these areas. But I mean, I can tell you personally, every friend that I have, every person that we've interviewed in this podcast has a job in BME. And the most important thing to do during your undergrad is get experience. I think more than the importance of your degree is it's really the experience that you're able to acquire during your undergrad. And I'm sure you're not going to have any problem with that. I mean, you've already had experience as a high school, so that already shows that you have initiative, to go the extra mile and do something and put experience in your resume, and that's the most important thing, or one of the most important things to do during your undergrad, no matter what degree you choose. Um, so yeah, other than experience like internships, networking is also very important because you never know who's going to help you land your next job. And to be quite honest, most of the time, simply applying online is not going to do the trick. Like, you have to know someone who's going to refer you. And that's just the reality of it, you know? And like, if you know that already, then do the effort to talk to people, to meet people, to get experience and things like that. So yeah, I think there's definitely jobs for BMEs. Maybe there are some companies that are reluctant to hire BMEs, but to be completely honest, I don't think it's so much the degree. I just think it's the kind of experience that you have and the skills, because maybe sometimes BMEs don't have as much of, I don't know, like technical skills. Um, so if you're a BME and maybe you know that you want to do design, or you want a specific job once you graduate, I would recommend to like start looking at those job descriptions, see what kind of skills people are looking for, because a company is not going to tell you, "Oh no, we don't want BMEs." If we don't want you because you're a BME, if in your resume you have all of this great experience through internships and you also have skills that are going to be very valuable to the company, that's what's most important. It's really those skills and experiences, and your network also plays a big role. I mean, personally, right now, I mean, just a personal, I guess, testimony. I had an internship during my undergrad career as a in a medical device startup. And I got this internship because before that I did research in college. So the principal investigator of my research lab knew of the founder of this medical device startup, so he gave me like a recommendation letter, and then I was able to get that internship at the medical device startup. And they offered me, or I mean, they offered me a full-time position. It hasn't happened yet because of COVID and everything. Startups are very uncertain, so if people are thinking of joining a startup, it's very fun, it's really good experience, but there's definitely a lot of risk associated with small companies. But I was able to keep my job, and I actually just got hired to another internship because I just recently became interested in regulatory affairs. So that's a whole other story. But I guess the main point is that yes, you can get a job, and there's BME is actually the fastest growing engineering field because it is new, and there are medical like advancements like all the time. So it can only keep growing, in my opinion. Um, so I think it has a good job outlook, and really most of the work in getting a job has to be done during your undergrad, and that's through experience and networking. So those are just two very important things to keep in mind. You don't want to just go and ace your classes but not have any experience, because that's
No,
not good.
yeah, I completely agree with you about the experience aspect of it because my mom is living proof that, you know,
Mhm.
some as a minorities, like Hispanic Americans, or where their parents move from, from their own country to America to have a better life. My mom didn't get the chance to fulfill her dreams to go into college, but she pushed herself to work even harder, and she landed in the medical device industry, and she worked her butt off to learn all the regulatory, all the the GMP, all the good manufacturing rules and stuff like that, and learning about FDA. To where she is now, she's in a very high position, and that's because of her many years of experience. And because of her experiences, she had like certain when she was applying for jobs, she encountered people like, you're overqualified because of your experience,
Mhm.
and we're not gonna
Mhm.
hire you. And so I kind of understood the job aspect because my mom and we're like best friends, and we talk about our experiences and jobs. So I 100% agree on the experience aspect. But also going on the same topic, I've also heard like on their degrees on biomedical engineering. So they were saying bachelor's you're not gonna get anywhere. Masters or the higher degree, you're gonna have a higher chance to being hired or having a higher position. And I was just wondering if that is really true.
No, I mean, so okay. So my boss at the current medical device startup, he is a PhD in chemical engineering. And one thing that he recommended to me, I mean, it is true that with a master's degree, um, you can be a more competitive candidate because if they have two options, like if a company is hiring and then they have two options, one with a master's and one with a bachelor's, yes, they probably will hire the master's one because they do have that little bit more of education, right? But if the other person can leverage with experience, I think both can be really good competitors because someone who's done a master's and never had real world experience, and then you compare them to someone who graduated from bachelor's and then had 2 to 3 years of experience already while that other person was doing a master's. I mean, it's really up to the company to decide what's best for them. Do they want someone with a lot of experience or someone who's fresh out of college or masters and maybe doesn't have real world experience but they have more education. I don't think there's a definite answer for that, but one thing that my boss did tell me is that he recommends that when you graduate from your bachelor's that you wait at least 1 or 2 years before you decide to go into graduate school, because if you really do like the financial analysis, you do end up benefiting better from having those 2 years of experience than going directly into graduate school. That's one thing. And the other thing is that just because you graduate from BME, for example, as a bachelor's, doesn't mean that you have to do a master's in BME. I mean, you could, but you could also do a master's in something else. Like one master's that I was considering was called engineering management, and that master's is for any engineer really, but it exposes you to like the business side. So with that, you can get more like executive or like leadership positions and things like that. So I think graduating from your bachelor's and getting those years of real world experience first are very valuable because you can really see maybe areas that you would like to specialize more on. Maybe you realize that you really like quality engineering and so you decide to do a master's in that. Or maybe you love BME and you just want to choose an area of BME to focus on, that you can do that. Or maybe you just want more understanding of computer, like you can master in anything. You can also master in BME if that's what you want. Another thing is that maybe doing a PhD can sometimes also overqualify you. And I mean, your mom is kind of like a witness of that, that sometimes your level of experience and your degrees can also overqualify you because sometimes a company will see like, well, this position doesn't really require a PhD, so I'm not gonna hire a PhD if I'm gonna have to pay them more. So I
Yeah.
mean, not saying to not do a PhD because of that, because obviously if you do a PhD, then you'll be applying to positions that require a PhD and you'll get paid accordingly. But no, I think you can definitely do enough with a bachelor's degree. Uh, you can so let's say you start, and this is a table that or not a table, a graph that my boss drew for me. He was like, say you started like 60K salary as an entry level, then you'll obviously, increase with time and experience. I think something that a master's or a PhD can do is maybe just bump you up, like help you start higher and also increase like the slope of the line of your like what's it called? Oh my gosh, I forgot the word. But your salary increase, like maybe you'll be able to get promoted faster or be paid more faster with less years. But it's really something that you have to decide yourself. Is a bachelor's enough for me? Do I want to do a master's? I mean, personally, for example, now that I'm being interested in the regulatory affairs side, because I used to really think that I would do this master's in management, but now that I'm interested in regulatory, I'm really searching, and it seems like what's most important at the end of the day is the experience and the technical skills that you have, which is best. Uh, you get you get it best at like actually working in a company, not studying it, as a master's. So it also really depends on what you want to do. But just as a short answer, can you do something as a simple bachelor's degree? Definitely. I mean, I can think of three right now of the people that we've interviewed that are at Medtronic and two girls from Boston Scientific. They all have bachelor's degrees only, and they're doing great. So I think you can definitely get really good opportunities with just a bachelor's. Could a master's maybe bump you up a little bit more? Definitely, but it's just something that you have to determine if it's worth for you, because a master takes longer, say 2 to 3 years, and you could have been just gaining that experience instead. It also costs money. So say it costs like I've seen in general a master's costs like $30,000. So in 3 years of working, let's say 60K, just like an average number, then that's like 60 times 3 is 180,000. So do you want to earn $180,000 in 3 years, or do you want to spend 30,000? But then if you do spend those 30,000, then maybe later you could earn more. So,
Yeah.
it's really just up to you and what you decide to do. But just short answer, yes, you can get great opportunities as just a bachelor's degree.
Before we get into kind of like the similar, uh, like you know how there's bioengineering and applied biomedical sciences. Before we go into that, I just wanted to know more about kind of like the categories you could learn about BMEs. To clarify on that, like I heard you could do cell and tissue engineering, drug delivery, prosthetics, biometronics. So can you kind of go through from your
Yeah.
experience or what you know?
Yeah, so just going off what my school offered, and again, this is something that you should look at if you're interested in a specific field, maybe what the school you're interested offers. But mine did biomechanics, then the other one was biomaterials and cell and tissue engineering. So all that was like considered one concentration. And then the last one was imaging and nanobiotechnology. So to start off with biomechanics, I really never understood what biomechanics was until our last podcast where we talked to Alex, who's a PhD working at Medtronic, and he has basically all his research was doing biomechanics, and that's really just studying the mechanical forces inside the body and how they affect diseases. Because, I mean, just one example, like there's this technology called negative pressure wound therapy that's basically applying negative pressure, so like a vacuum to wounds, and that really stimulates the cells to move a certain way that triggers them towards healing. So we're used to treating diseases and wounds and whatever with drugs. That's usually our go-to. But in biomechanics, you really focus on what is the mechanical activity that's going on physiologically, either in the condition like heart disease, or maybe in wounds simply, like you could either treat wounds with a drug, or if you apply this negative pressure, it's like a mechanical stimulus for to trigger those cells to enter that healing response. So biomechanics, I think, really studies the effect of mechanics in the body. That's one thing. I think biomechanics can also be kind of related to prosthetics, because if you study the overall like mechanism of the body as a whole, then maybe you can design better prosthetics that, just fit better to the body and things like that. So those are maybe two examples that I could talk about in biomechanics. I honestly don't know much about the field. The second one that my school offered was biomaterials, cell and tissue engineering, and that's the one that I actually focused on. And that's really the more like science like research based BME field, because you're actually working with cells. Um, so just to give you an example, like during my research, like I work with growing cells, and we would grow them in these flasks and then like passage them. And then one of the projects that we did with these cells was combining two types of cells so that they would create network vessels. Because one thing that's very, when you want to study diseases, maybe one thing that you can do is like tissue engineering, like trying to replicate living tissue in a dish, and you can study how certain things affected, like drugs or other things. Um, so this is where cell and tissue engineering really come in place. Also, if you've heard of like stem cell research, everything
Yeah.
really related to like cells and tissue and how we can use them, just to study or treat diseases, is cell and tissue engineering. And I think in tissue engineering specifically is where people can start researching how to do artificial organs and things like that, because you're really trying to replicate living tissue, or if not replicate it, at least try to biomimic it. So this is that field. And then the third one that my school offered was imaging, which is really, I mean, the main idea is how can we look inside the body without opening it? So think of like
Hmm.
ultrasounds, X-rays, CT scans, things like that. So this engineering really, or this field of BME really focuses on like learning about sensors and signal processing, and this is more like the electronics kind of side of BME. Uh, so those are just three main areas, and I mean, you can tell that none of those are really medical devices.
Hmm.
Those three are really like research based. I mean, I guess the imaging is a kind of medical device because ultrasounds and x-rays are medical devices, but you don't see everything else that's considered a medical device. So with that being said, even though I concentrated in cell and tissue engineering, I still got a job in the medical device industry. So your whatever you choose in college doesn't necessarily have to determine what you end up doing. It's just really something that you have to learn, and then once you go into the industry, whatever industry you choose, then they'll teach you there what you have to learn really. And I think the core of any engineering degree is really learning how to solve problems, how to think critically, and BME just does give you that ability to not only think of engineering, but also think of the patient, think of how the body responds, and things like that. So yeah, I hope that answered your
Hmm.
question. Is there any like specific field of BME that you were like interested in?
Yeah, I was interested, like I said, from kind of like pharmaceutical, working with drug delivery.
Mhm.
I'm sure biomedical engineering can go into that type of field because I have like my mom's boss is living proof. But I
Yeah.
really like cell and tissue engineering. That sounds like very interesting and less mathy to
Yeah,
me.
yeah, it
Yeah.
definitely is. There's definitely not really any math in that. So, and if you like anatomy and learning more about biology, I think that would be a really good like field to focus on. The thing about those kind of like very science focused fields is that I think people in those really just end up pursuing PhD degrees because they want to do research, like that's what they want to dedicate their lives to, just being in the lab, working with cells. And those career paths do usually end up doing research, but I mean, PhD, but just because they really enjoy it. So, yeah, it's just something that you have to decide once you're there.
Another question. I'm not sure if you know about these degrees, but I was looking at like my hometown the kind of like my city's state college, and I noticed that there's applied biomedical science, biomedical engineering, bioengineering, biotech. Do these like do these degrees land you in the same job? Do they interconnect? And does it what would be the difference basically?
Yeah, no, that is a great question. And they're definitely different degrees. They definitely do overlap in some areas. So, this is something that I've come to learn because of all the questions we've gotten here. So, biomedical science, we actually have a friend who has a YouTube channel that's dedicated to biomedical science. And it's really like BME, but take out the engineering out. So, maybe you're not really learning any of the math. You're not learning how to design medical devices. You really focus on the science. Uh, so I mean, I don't know too much about the field, but I want to say that biomedical science is definitely more for researchers and things like that, because you're not interested in engineering at all. Then biotechnology, um, one thing that I've really, or like that has helped me differentiate biotechnology from biomedical engineering because I used to use kind of like the terms interchangeably. So I would talk about, oh yeah, I'm in the field of biotech because I thought medical devices are biotech, but it's really not, because biotechnology is any technology that uses living systems. So, like vaccines and like what else? Like using bacteria to, I don't know. I mean, like I don't know too much about the field, but like I know that it's using living systems, which you don't always do in BME. Sure, you could, in BME you can work with cells and tissue engineering, which are biotech because they are living systems. But then BME also gives you the opportunity to do medical devices and other kinds of technology that don't use living systems. So I think that's what helps me differentiate the three. But as you mentioned, there's definitely a lot of overlapping. Some can get you specific jobs, and then the three can probably get you one kind of job. So, for example, a biomedical scientist is not going to be an engineer because they don't have that engineering background. But can they all three work in a research lab, maybe developing vaccines or studying vaccines? I think so. Can they all work in like stem cell research or cell and tissue engineering? I would think so too. Um, but what really differentiates BME is that being able to go into the like work as an engineer. Um, and also one career that I missed was bioengineering, which is different from BME, but they're honestly both the same. Like the only difference is that with bioengineering, you can look at other biological systems that are not the human body. So like plants, like agriculture and things like that are also in the field of bioengineering. But I think both bioengineers and biomedical engineers can get the same kind of jobs regardless. And honestly, most universities offer one or the other because they use the terms interchangeably. So even though there is a difference, bioengineers can still have most of their classes focused on medical applications. So it really does depend on the university. But from my understanding, both bioengineering and biomedical engineering are used interchangeably by universities. So they're basically the same. So yeah, I hope that helps.
It did. All that you're saying really helps me a lot. Um, do you know any people like your peers or people that you worked with that studied biomedical engineering for the 4 years, but then went into medical school? Because I heard that's very common because it sets them apart and more competitive. I'm very like you can say like how the movie Divergent, how you're supposed to fit into a faction.
Yes.
I'm Divergent. I don't know, like I'm willing to do anything in nursing, becoming a doctor. I have interest into becoming a doctor. Um,
Mhm.
but can you is that common? That's the first part.
Yeah. So yeah, there were definitely a lot of people, and I mean by a lot of people, maybe like a handful of people in my class that went into medical school, or if they're not already there, they that was their plan. You know, BME is definitely, I think, a great career or degree to choose if you're thinking of medical school. And we actually had a military surgeon come into one of our classes one day just to explain why it's good to go into medical school. And he said that, most people, I mean, the normal for medical schools is doing pre-med or biology and degrees like that. And I think as BMEs, or the career BM or the field of BME starts growing, more and more BMEs are, or more people that are interested in medical school are taking BME instead. And I think it definitely shows like another perspective, because you're not only learning about biology to learn about the body, you're learning how to solve problems, how to innovate in the medical field. And medical schools really value that a lot. Like you'll definitely be a more competitive candidate when it comes to applying to these schools. They'll really value you for just having that engineering degree and like showing this interest in medical innovation. Um, so I think it's good, and honestly, yeah, I think studying biomedical engineering, if you're interested and maybe unsure about medical school, is great because you can always, decide along the way. Like you just need whatever degree associated with medicine as your undergrad. And I think biomedical engineering has maybe more interesting, I mean, at least in my opinion, uh, kinds of jobs that you could do once you graduate compared to a biology degree. Um, I mean, just because I am, in BME, it is more interesting for me, but it definitely does set you apart when it comes to applying for medical schools. And like, if you choose to not go to medical school at the end of the day, um, you still end up with a really good degree, So I think it's definitely an option. And one thing that I do know is that those people that were thinking of medical school, they take a different track of BME. So, for example, like I mentioned, my track was cell and tissue engineering, and then there was biomechanics and imaging. So, these people who were interested in medical school took like BME, but with a pre-med track. So, what that means really is just that when it comes to electives, instead of taking maybe some technical engineering classes, they take more like organic chemistry or other classes that are required by medical schools. So yeah, it's definitely an option, and they do value engineers. And honestly, I think any kind of engineer actually, or at least mechanicals, can also go into medical school, from my understanding. So yeah.
For those, or if I come, it could be applied to anyone. If that person, doesn't get into medical school, or they change their minds about going to medical school, is there kind of like an opportunity in BME where they can go into a clinical setting as a job?
Yeah, that is a great question. And from my understanding, or I know of two ways that you can work in the clinical environment as a BME. One of them is going into clinical engineering, which I don't know much about, but I know that the overall like idea of a clinical engineer is they're more of a like hospital manager. Like they make sure that like the logistics of like hospital equipment. They make sure every like almost like quality assurance of like the hospital equipment. Maybe they'll work with like the biomed technicians and things like that. So you can definitely be around the hospital as a clinical engineer. So you're more of a hospital manager. Um, then there's also something that I was actually considering for myself was while I was an undergrad, I learned of these certifications that you can get. And this one, so I studied in Texas, in San Antonio, and this certification that you could get was in Houston. So I was really considering it because Houston is like the biggest medical branch, at least here in Texas. I know that's where it is. So basically, it was like a 6 month program where you ended up as a cardiac device specialist. And they really train you on everything related to cardiac devices, and electrophysiology and things like that. And from my understanding is that you could either end up working with doctors, so helping them with procedures, but really just being on the side of the medical device, like mapping the heart and like looking at the heart, and just like operating the device. Um, or you could work with um, like cardiac device companies, like medical device companies, and be like a liaison between the hospitals and those companies that provide medical devices. So this was specifically, and if anyone's interested, there's more information in their website, and I'll definitely send you a link about it. Not that you have to go to Houston, but like I'm sure that there's more like it in other places of the country. So I think the information itself in that website was just really good because it's definitely like something that you wouldn't think of pursuing like out of the top of your head, like it's something that I came across and like I was very interested in. Um, and that was specifically in cardiac devices, but I'm also sure that there's other kind of certifications in other devices. The only reason why I honestly didn't choose to pursue it is because it was so specific, like cardiac devices only, and that's very specific, and it's very interesting. Like I do have an interest in cardiology, but I just didn't want to like choose that if I wasn't completely sure that I wanted to do that for the rest of my life. Um, and it also cost the same as a master's degree, which I was pretty impressed because it's like you don't get a master's, you just get a certification. But I actually came across a video the other day that said like, why are certifications better than master's degrees? So I don't know. I mean, that's just an opinion that I saw out there. I didn't really look into it too much, but then maybe certifications are not bad. Like if it costs that much, maybe it's because it's worth it. But yeah, those are two ways that I know you can work in the clinical environment. Another thing is maybe like getting into clinical research, which this is another area that I don't really know much about, but I know there's like clinical research associates and like that's like a whole other industry. Um, if you're interested in working in the clinical environment, that's something that I would look into. But yeah, you really just work with like clinical trials for like devices or drugs and things like that. So that's pretty interesting as well.
Another question more specifically about kind of like your projects and like your projects that you've done in biomedical engineering, because as a high school engineering student, we always have a project to do, and I've noticed that as the time passes by, like I've been doing projects by myself, and it can get very overwhelming and very hard because you have to, it's just you and your brain. I was
Yeah.
wondering, is most of the projects in college collaborative, or is it independent, or is it mix of both?
Yeah, no, I would honestly say for sure that most of the projects are with a team. And I think that's really important because most of the time, as an engineer in the real world, you will have a team. Um, and a lot of times this team can be people with very diverse backgrounds. So I think it's very important to learn how to work in a team, learn how to lead a team. So I would definitely say most of my classes were team based. I can't think right now of any project that I did on my own. And if I did, it would be something very simple. Um, but I actually remember that during my internship, my boss was like, "Yeah, I'm gonna make you guys like give a PowerPoint presentation because we've realized that more and more college students don't really have experience presenting, and it's very important." But I was very surprised by that, by what he said, because in my classes, they would literally make us present, like give a PowerPoint presentation, like almost every 2 weeks, especially in like when taking labs, because labs, you do them in a team, environment. And then every time you finished an experiment, you would present it to the class. So we did have a lot of experience presenting and working in teams, and it's very important because most of my career, like my undergrad career, I was, always had the same people in my team, and we worked really well together. But then for my senior design project, we did not have the best team, and it was such a hassle. Like it was so hard because of the people in the team. Some people just, you know, are very irresponsible or don't like doing their job or just leave everything last minute, and that's part of learning as well. Learning how to deal with people is also very important, and how you can motivate them to do their work. But just going along this question, because we have one question that's asking one of the best projects I've done in BME, it would definitely have to do my senior design project. So even though my team wasn't great, I think the project itself was really cool because my dad is actually an OBGYN. And he always wanted me to, or all of us, to go to medical school, but like I wasn't really interested in that. But when it came to senior design, I always had this like knowledge of like babies and pregnancies and things like that. So I was very interested in the field, and we actually ended up developing like a wearable fetal monitor. And this is really important because my boyfriend and I were actually watching a series on Netflix called The Surgeon's Cut, and the first episode is on he calls himself a fetal doctor, but it's basically like a subspecialization of OBGYNs, but they really focus on the actual baby. And all these babies had like things going on with them that were wrong and things like that. And the main core of our project was that in pregnancies, these pregnant mothers in the beginning of their pregnancy, they only check up on their baby like once a month. And then as their pregnancy evolves, maybe once a week, and then, like that. Uh, but it's really important because the only way mothers can check on their baby's health is by going to the doctor, and that's only once a month. And anything can go wrong in that period of time. So our goal with this monitor was to be able to give mothers like a little bit more peace of mind, but also really just monitoring the health of the baby. So anyway, it was really fun to like work with my dad on this and just get, because this is something that they'll also teach you as a BME, is like how to take an idea to final like development of the product and then putting it in the market. Like those are also things that they like to teach you about, because it's one thing to be an engineer, but it's another thing to be an innovator, be able to distinguish clinical needs, what is needed in the medical market. Um, so that's something that I really enjoyed about my degree, is that they really trained you to innovate. And I think that was really fun. Obviously, in the real world, most of the times you can really just do that if you have your own startup, which is very risky. But some people do choose to go that route. But yeah, it was very interesting.
As my questions come to an end, um, you mentioned kind of like the financial aspect of BME, and obviously college is not not wouldn't say it's affordable, but it's very expensive, and some
Mhm.
people don't get enough aid or they're in student debt. I was wondering how rewarding is BME, and uh, what is one of the highest salaries that you might know? Because, not saying that's the most important thing about, choosing BME. You have to be passionate about it and love it,
Mhm.
but things don't get paid out of the air.
Yeah, no, that is a great question, and I think, no, yeah, that is great. And just going off, first, I just want to cover a little bit on financial help while you're an undergrad. One thing that you can do is, or one thing that I did was when I did research, I actually did it as a scholarship. So they ended up giving me a scholarship to do research, which is kind of getting paid for doing research. And you can also get paid for doing research. So there are those opportunities to, get experience and get paid at the same time. So I would definitely recommend for everyone to just, search what's available out there to help you. Um, with those payments and things like that. So yeah, that's definitely very true. School is very expensive. But I want to say that BME is a rewarding career. I mean, it's not the best paid engineering at all. I know the best paid engineering is computer engineering, I believe. Um, but I think BME is still a good paying career. I mean, you're not gonna make millions, but at least here in San Antonio, I know that the starting um like entry level salary is like maybe around 60K. I know that's one of the companies that they do that, like 60K as an entry level engineer. And we've been working on this survey for like the past, I don't know how many months. So we've been sending a survey out to professional BMEs to know how much they're earning across the US. So we've been collecting that data, and we should be putting a video on that soon of like real people saying, this is how many years of experience I have. This is where I work, like what city I'm in, and this is how much I earn. So I knew you were going to ask this question, and we actually have someone that works at in Boston, um, and with, I think they have like 2 years of experience, and they make $79,000.
That's pretty
So
good.
I think that's good. Again, as a computer engineer, you could make way more. I do want to say that they work at a really good medical device company, so that's something also something to consider. But I think overall, BME will be a well-paying career. Like you're not gonna waste your money and like not make it like earn it back. Like I think it's definitely worth it. Um, and yeah, maybe as an entry level, you won't be making as much as you would expect, maybe. But I mean, to me, that's a good salary. Obviously, if you're thinking of something more for yourself, then maybe you should choose another career. But you can definitely get, I mean, I just want to, I like being transparent because I know it's
Mhm.
hard to find these answers out there. But my boss said that within 8 years, at least here in Texas, where you start at like 60K, you can definitely be in the 100s, which I think is really good. So yeah, it's definitely a well-paid career. Not the best paid engineering, but yeah, I hope
Yeah.
that answers. Yeah.
Yeah, I also looked like, obviously I did like my own research and Googling how much do BMEs make in my area, Massachusetts, specifically Boston, and the numbers are pretty high, but like we were talking about before, is based on experience and degrees and stuff like that. Kind of like a final question is, what can I do to prepare for, going into BME, or kind of any advice in general of what I should expect?
Yeah. So just to really quickly finish the last salary question, I just remembered that, and I think I
Yeah.
told you this before we started the live, but just to tell everyone, Massachusetts is the third highest, like the state with the third highest employment rate. So it's definitely a great area to be in if you're interested in BME. I forgot what the first other two were, but I mean it doesn't really matter. The fact is that it's a great area to be in. So that's awesome. But jumping into just general advice for BME, I mean I think, you know, again, just the two most important things to remember are that you need experience and networking. Like that's what's really gonna, those are gonna be the key to a successful career once you graduate. Another thing is that, at least I was very confused when I first came into BME. I just chose it because it sounded cool. Like there were not that many resources out there. I mean, you could search what is BME and then you would get your Google answer, but that was pretty much it. Um, so I came into it not really understanding what I could do with it, what it even was. And even now, like maybe there may be a little bit more resources, but it's okay if in the beginning you feel a little confused, I think. And it's also okay if you feel overwhelmed with your classes. I think that's normal. And when I first came in to my class, at least in my program in my university, my BME class was very small. So, like, the class that graduated with me was like 36 or 38 people. So it was very small, and I really like that because it does give you like just that more, I don't want to say like family environment, but a little bit more like a family. Like
Yeah, I understand.
you, yeah, like you know everyone, and like um I think that's good because you can get inspired by other people or know of opportunities from other people, or just, you see someone doing better and you want to do better yourself.
Hmm.
So I think it's a good to keep like a competitive environment. Um, but anyway, what I was going to say is that in the beginning, I would look at all these people in my class and I would think, oh my gosh, they're all so smart. Like they all know so much. Like they seemed like they knew everything, and I felt like I was struggling here on the other side on my own. And then little by little, I started to realize that everyone felt the same way. Like everyone looked around and felt like everyone else was smarter and everyone was really struggling. Um, but I mean, it's just, I think if you choose BME or any engineering degree, yeah, I mean, you might have to take it for granted that, or not for granted, but most people that choose those careers are ambitious people. You know, like it's engineering is not a career like, oh, well, I don't know what to do, so I guess I'll just do engineering. You know, it's not really something you go for just because. You do it because you're interested and you have a passion and you just want to learn. So the people that you'll find in it will usually be very competitive people and smart people most of the time, but you're also there, you know, you're capable, and even though you struggle, that's normal. And that's something that I wasn't really aware of in the beginning, that struggling is okay and feeling overwhelmed is okay, and you probably will feel that way. But you just have to know that there's always a light at the end of the tunnel. Like you're gonna pass, you're gonna do great, and you do have to focus on your classes and get good grades, because, well, at least my BME program does require you to not fall below like a 3.0 or something. So yeah, there is that, you know, criteria that you have to meet. But the most important thing to remember is that the experience and the network is the most important thing to do during your undergrad. And yeah, other than that, you know, just enjoy it, like do as much experience as you can, but also don't feel bad if you can't find it. You know, like it'll come to you eventually and the right door will open. Um, and also don't listen to people that may have negative opinions about BME. I mean, you'll realize that if you like it, and it'll be worth it. And again, I mean, the facts are there. The people are there. Like, there's people with BME degrees that are happy with their degrees, that love it, that have um, great careers. So all those people, I mean, I can't speak for everyone because I don't know everyone's stories, but I think as long as you put the effort in your undergrad, you should be good once you graduate. And I mean, I'm saying this as someone who graduated during a pandemic, so I think that's good.
Yeah. Well, thank you. That's all the questions I had, Mary. I'm very grateful for this opportunity, because I don't have much guidance. I don't know much people because the person that I do have contact that is in the biomedical industry, he's very busy with his job. So the last
Mm,
thing, it's kind of hard to kind of have ask questions and kind of have someone to educate me more on BME. So I'm very
mhm.
grateful for you and kind of all your advice. It's very helpful and it really sold me into BME. I feel more calmer and I think I'm gonna,
Oh,
you know, pursue it and see what happens.
no, that's awesome to hear. And like as much as I love BME, I really didn't want to like brainwash you or anything like
Yeah.
that. But I'm so glad that it helped you and that you do see value in BME, because I do think it's a beautiful career, like, and it's very rewarding. But yeah, no, thank you for reaching out to us and like being willing to be on camera and being brave enough to just talk. And that's really cool. But yeah, I know you're gonna do great in BME. Like, honestly, you shouldn't even worry. Like, you'll be great.
Thank you so much.
Yeah, okay. Well, I think we're gonna stay on the live just to answer any like
Hmm.
remaining questions, but we'll definitely keep in touch. And thank you
Yes.
so much for your time and just being here.
No, thank you. Have a good
Okay.
day.
Thank you, you too. Bye.
Bye.
Okay. So, yeah, that was Daisy. I hope you guys enjoyed it. It was really fun. Like, I think it's usually me asking questions in like podcasts when I talk to other people. So it's really cool to get questions because we just want to answer whatever you guys are wondering. So if you guys have any questions that I did not go over during Daisy's Q&A, please let me know. Um, I think this video should actually be titled like Crash Course on BME because I think we covered a lot of areas that are very important to know. And my sister asked, Mary, what's 9 plus 10? It's 21. Okay. Um, did you put a question? Sorry, I missed it.
Yeah. All right.
Mm, okay. I want to ask that one should do major maybe or minor. I mean, it's up to you. I think that's kind of like the idea of what we just covered with Daisy. BME can definitely be a minor. For example, if you're thinking of um, like I don't know, majoring in mechanical or electrical engineering because you just want to get more of that heavy knowledge in engineering or electronics, but you just want to learn a little bit about the medical application, then you can minor in BME. But if you want all your classes to have medical focus and just learn how to be the gap between doctors and engineers, I think biomedical engineering is great. So yeah, it's up to you. I majored in BME and I loved it, and we have people in our podcast that majored in BME and they love it. So yeah, it's up to you and your interests. So I hope that helps. Okay, so someone asked which BME, it's one of our last questions, Adrian, before Alexis, it says which BME specialization is closest to bioinformatics? Um, I mean, one of my classes was called computational bioengineering, and I think that would be the closest one. But I think bioinformatics can be a field of BME. Like, why not? Um, I would just look into your school, whatever school you're interested in, and see the classes that they offer, see if any one of them match with bioinformatics. If not, you can just get the necessary knowledge and skills on your own on the outside, you know. So yeah. Rugul said, Adrian doing a great job behind the scenes. He always is. Yes.
Woo!
Yeah, we wouldn't have. Adrian is always behind the scenes, by the way. If he's not on the screen, he is behind the scenes, displaying your comments, your questions, um, also replying to the chat. So that's really good because I don't think I could do all this at once on my own. So yeah, shout out to Adrian. Um, someone said, Dorinda Brown said, do all aspects of biomedical engineering involve depth physics? So I'm kind of going from bottom to top. Um, and it's okay. No, I think one of the fields of BME that goes mostly into physics is probably like instrumentation or like imaging and things like that. Um, I don't know much about those areas because I didn't study them, but those are definitely like imaging is very important because it's where you look at how you can look at the body without opening it, like X-rays and ultrasounds and things like that. So, learning about waves and all of those frequencies, and you start looking at wavelengths, frequencies, and using those terms in your classes, then it's becoming physics, and that's definitely what happens in imaging. So it's very interesting field, but it was pretty hard for me, honestly. So I didn't pursue it. But I hope that answers your question. Let me know if you have any other one. Um, okay. Turkish Stick said it was very good. Keep on these live streams. Thank you. It's been a while since we had just like a casual Q&A live stream. But I missed them too because it's really cool. And um, I guess I forgot what it's called, but um, I was gonna mention about the super chat that it's a thing that people can do if anyone is interested in supporting the BME Live. There's a feature called super chat where you can monetarily support us if you're interested. Just an FYI. I just saw YouTube say like you should tell your viewers that super chat is available. So that's what I'm doing. Uh, okay, I'm gonna read every question, but I just want to say that I might not have all the answers because I'm kind of skipping questions or some questions that I'm like, I don't know that, but I'm gonna read them, and if I don't know the answer, I'm sorry. Okay, or just comments. So this one says, thank you. I'm from Nigeria. I think the USA is a little strict on us over here. Currently in my final year of bachelor's program in biomedical engineering. Awesome. I think I know someone from Nigeria actually that went to my school. She did a master's. So it's pretty cool.
This was his question.
Oh, okay. So they asked, is it advisable for people from other continents to study BME or bachelor's masters in the US with the sole purpose of finding a job after graduation? I would think so. Honestly, we get a lot of international people asking, how can they come to the US to work? And I always tell them that the easiest thing to do, not that it's easy, but I think the easiest path is to study here first because it's way easier to study here and be exposed to this country and like how it works here. And then it's just easier to find a job once you're already here. So yeah, you can also always end up marrying someone who's a US citizen, and then it would make things way easier. Um, it's just funny because that's a lot. That's something that my Mexican people do a lot. So I just thought I would throw it out there. It's just funny, but yeah, it's just a joke though. Okay. Um. Okay, so Darsh R said, how important is it to learn various programming languages to build various medical machines? I personally don't know any programming, but I also don't really design medical software. So it really depends on, the skills that you want to have depend on the kind of job that you want to do once you graduate. So because I don't know much about programming, I can't really answer that question, but I would recommend that you either talk to someone who works in that field or just look at job descriptions, like job positions for that you're interested in, and then look at what skills they're looking for. And then just, write that list down and then check mark every skill that you have and every skill that you don't, learn it. So I think that's just one thing that I would do. Okay. Saeed R, I think that's how you pronounce it, said, love from India, best channel. Thank you. That really means a lot. Um, we try our best to be valuable. Okay. Don Von Thinney said, neuroengineering explanation, please. Uh, I'll have to fail here because I don't really know much about neural engineering, but I would say it's just using, engineering principles to understand um how to treat the brain or like yeah, how to treat it, how to work with its interface and things like that. Um one thing that I know one area of neural engineering can relate to um what's it called? Drug delivery because if you're interested in neuroengineering, you may know that the brain has this barrier of cells called the blood-brain barrier, and it's very hard to treat the brain because of this layer that basically doesn't let things pass to, like, it's very selective on what crosses that membrane to go into the brain. So if someone has a tumor in the brain, it's really hard to treat it with drugs because that barrier doesn't let the drug go into the brain and treat the tumor. So one area of research is drug delivery, and how can we affect the blood-brain barrier in a way that it lets us um, get into it and then be able to treat the tumor, you know? Um, so one drug delivery system that I saw is actually like using ultrasound waves to disrupt the blood-brain barrier and be able to, um, because I forget the word, but basically just get to it, deliver the drug, and deliver it specifically to the tumor. So yeah, that's just one area of research that's related to, neural engineering or neuroscience. Okay, I'm just gonna look for another question. Hope that helps. Let me know if it doesn't. Nikki Gray said, I'm a senior going into BME too. I love your channel. I also applied to UTSA. Go Runners. That's awesome. Honestly, UTSA has a great BME program. The chair of the department is amazing. I really enjoyed UTSA because it is a small program. It's definitely growing, but it is small. So you get like really good networking opportunities, and just your class is small, so you make good friends and things like that. So I loved UTSA. I don't have anything bad to say about it. Okay. So Janelle Tam said, what are some ways to get involved in the BME field as a high school student? Um, a lot of it, honestly, is probably through connections. Like, Daisy was saying, like her mom had that network that basically let her be able to have this kind of internship experience at a pharmaceutical company. So it's really good. Just, but I mean, not everyone has like a family network. So if you don't, I think one thing I found out recently is that some schools or like hospitals have actually programs for high school students. So I would just look at what programs are available. I know UT Health does like research programs for high school students. So yeah, that's all I know. I know NASA also has opportunities for high school. So I just look online, and then I think as a high school student, maybe I don't know what the knowledge of high schoolers is right now, but I didn't know about LinkedIn when I was in high school, so I don't know if you guys do. But if you do or if you don't, then you should still do this, which is create a LinkedIn profile, and then just look for opportunities and um, connect with people, which is very important. And by connect, I don't mean send those friend requests and then forget about them. Like, connect with people and then talk to them. I know it's hard to just randomly talk to someone you don't know, but hey, it's way harder to actually meet someone versus just like messaging. So I think that's a good thing to do if you research opportunities and maybe you find like a specific place where there are opportunities. I would contact people on LinkedIn just to make sure that you actually make it in. Um, okay, just gonna search for another question. So, okay, what are the pros and cons of getting a PhD in BME? Um, I mean, I don't have a PhD in BME myself. I don't think there's any con to having a PhD other than when you start applying for jobs, you have to find jobs that require your level of expertise. So because you can be overqualified sometimes. So yeah, just be aware of that. And maybe those jobs will be less. There will be less of them. So that's one thing. But I think if you want to do a PhD, I mean, you'll always have that option to go into academia and research, which is another possibility. But I don't know. I would say, other than what I just said, which isn't really a con so much, I think the higher you go in your education, the more knowledge that you have and the more prestige you add to yourself as a professional. So yeah, I hope that helps. Steffi Thomas. I think she reached out to us on Instagram recently. So thank you for being here. Thank you everyone for being here. Um, but I mean, I talked a little bit about tissue engineering earlier, but it's really just a lot of the research I've seen take like it's mostly about like tissue regeneration. So one of the projects I saw was like taking like skin from like either yourself or other animals like pigs and then decellularizing those skin grafts and then putting it to use for tissue regeneration like on wounds and things like that. Tissue engineering and cell engineering, I think it's just really the study of cell tissue interactions with whatever. Like one class that I took under tissue engineering was called biocompatibility, and I this was probably my most favorite class in my BME degree, which was studying the reactions of the body, like the cellular interactions when there's a wound in the skin. What is the series of events that happen so that your body and the cells heal wounds. And in this class, we also looked at implants. What is the response of your body to foreign materials, different kinds of materials, because implants can be like um, metals, ceramics, polymers. So there's obviously different responses to these. I mentioned earlier that I think tissue engineering can also go into looking at how to create artificial organs, things like that. So I hope that helps. So just to remind everyone, my real knowledge is in the medical device industry. So everything else I say is really just from what I learned in school or things that I've seen online. I okay, so I kind of went over this earlier too. Do I have a job in BME? Yes, kind of. So just to give a little bit more explanation of my professional life, when I was a junior in my BME degree, I got this internship at a medical device startup as a product development intern. And then I continued on with them until I graduated. And when I graduated, they basically said that they could offer me a full-time position there. But because of COVID and just the uncertainty of startups, I don't have a full-time position there yet. So I'm still working part-time though. It's been really fun. I really like product development because it exposes you to different areas of the medical device industry. So most of what I did in the beginning was actually a lot of manufacturing. Then there was a lot of creating assembly procedures. Then it really came a lot. Like we did a lot of testing. So I kind of became like a test engineer. And um, writing testing protocols, doing the actual testing, and verification and validation. After that, so I mean, my responsibilities really evolved with the needs of the company that we were in because it is a startup. So we have this product and we're going towards market. So there's a lot of stages that you have to go through. Once you finish the testing, I became more of a quality and regulatory intern. So I actually helped put together our 510(k) application for the FDA clearance. And through this experience and really just my past knowledge of this area, I became really interested in regulatory, to which I decided to um, just research more about this field of regulatory affairs, which is really a combination of like science, technology, um, law, and yeah, I think there's another thing, but I forgot. Um, but it's really, what all the rules and regulations that the FDA uses to approve medical devices, drugs, um, food, cosmetics, and things like that. So it's a whole nother thing on the legal side, but I've really enjoyed learning about it. So I decided to do some research on that and see what the job outlook is in that field and how to get a job in that field or more experience. So I researched on YouTube and I found this channel called 101 Mentor, and I mean, his videos are in like career development as a whole, but he is a regulatory affairs professional, so he also has some videos in that. And one of the things that he mentioned is that people in regulatory affairs are usually overwhelmed with work. So a lot of times, if you offer your help, they will take it. So at the same time, I had found while I was working on the 510(k) application at my job, I was looking at 510(k) resources and I found a podcast um, where the guest talking about how to have a successful 510(k) application was the founder and president of the Medical Device Academy, which is a regulatory affairs consulting firm. So I saw that they also had a YouTube channel talking about regulatory affairs and what they do as a company. And I decided to reach out to them because I thought they were really cool and it was an industry that I was interested in. They were also doing YouTube, which is something that I do. So I just thought it was pretty cool. And I reached out to them and I ended up getting a job part time with them as well. So I actually started last week and I really enjoyed learning about regulatory, and I think it's something that I want to pursue as a career. But going back to how I found out that how I could get this experience, it was through 101 Mentor, and I just want to shout him out there because without watching that video, I would have never thought of doing that, and I wouldn't have reached out to them. I wouldn't have gotten the job. So I'm just really thankful to Brian from 101 Mentor. And one thing that he also does is review resumes. So if you check out his channel, he also does resume reviews. He helped me with my resume for free. So if you're interested in having your resume reviewed, I would definitely go to him. He's been very helpful in giving me a lot of advice. So just want to put it out there. Okay, let's see. Is it possible to find a field within BME that enables to work mostly by yourself, and how hard is it to open your own company or business?
Kind of what you do with regulatory affairs and what you can do, open
Yeah,
your own company.
yeah, that's exactly what I was gonna say. Um, so like I mentioned, I did get a job with regulatory affairs, and one thing that I'm actually working 100% from home because it's a lot of documentation, working with clients, helping advise people. I mean, I'm very new, so I do a lot of training right now, but I do see uh, my coworkers that are very much advanced in this field, and I really like the idea of like working with clients from very different kinds of medical device companies and very different kinds of medical devices. Like I've gotten to work with a great variety of products already, which is already really cool because you get to learn about everything and anything and all the new stuff that's coming up, which is really cool. Um, so with that being said, it is 100% remote. I really enjoy the work. I do work technically with other people because I'm shadowing. I think later in my career I could be more independent but still collaborate sometimes. But this job is definitely very independent once you're advanced, and it can also give you the opportunity to one as when you have acquired a lot of experience, you just go on your own and work independently as a consultant and like consult companies, um, which I think is really cool because if you wanted to, yeah, you could definitely work on your own and start, and eventually even if you want to hire employees that help you, um, you could start your own company in this as well. So this is definitely, an option if that's something that you really want to do, like like just work by yourself or maybe start your own company. I mean, starting a startup is also a way, I think, but it's definitely harder, I feel like, because there's way more things that go into place. So at the startup, I just work with my boss right now. It's really just two of us. I mean, there are other people, but they're not in the office with us. So you definitely don't have a huge like a lot of people in your as your coworkers. So yeah. Okay, so do you need a lot of capital to develop new methods or devices of medicine? I would think so. And um, startups do require a lot of investment, like a lot. So I would say yes. Maybe if you're a student, I would start right there. If you're really interested in entrepreneurship, I think starting while you're an undergrad is a really good just idea because you can get funded through your school or through programs that your school offers. I mean, as a professional, you can also have a startup and like apply to like accelerators that give or incubators that give you access to a network of investors. Um, so, I mean, I just want to say if you're worried that maybe you don't have enough money, you can still do it, but you do have to find the money somewhere, you know, which is definitely, I mean, it's definitely doable. That's what people do when they start startups. A lot of people do invest in their own startups, but that's what incubators and accelerators are for, um, to just give you a network of investors. But I would really recommend to talk to professionals in this area, people who have started their own startups because it's definitely not easy. There's a lot of things that you have to think about because if you start getting money from these investors, you have to think about how you're going to pay them back, which is usually through maybe like interest. So they basically give you a loan, so you have to give back interest within a certain amount of time, or you give them stocks, and it's a whole other world. Like there's so many things to think about. So it's definitely not for everyone, and I mean anyone can do it, but you do need the right mentors, I think. So just something to think about. Um, okay, let's see. Looking to see if there's
I don't know.
any other questions. Okay. Hi, I know this is about high school, but I'm currently pursuing a physics degree. But I would love to make prosthetics and I was thinking of going for a master's in BME. Is this a reasonable path to take. Okay. Um, I mean, I honestly don't know how. I I just because I don't know doesn't mean that you can't do it, but I just don't know how physics and prosthetics relate. You know, like um, I would try to choose. I'm currently pursuing physics. Okay, you're already pursuing physics. I'm not sure if BME would be the best masters to do prosthetics. I mean, there is a masters in prosthetics, so that's something that you should look for. But it's not so much about the masters, but the school itself. Like, look to see if they have labs that do prosthetics. And it doesn't have to be in BME. Sometimes mechanical engineering labs do prosthetics and things like that. So I think it is reasonable. Um, I would just make sure before you do it. You know, you don't want to enter a master's that is heavily focused on cell and tissue engineering if you want to do prosthetics. So just do be aware of that. Hope that helps. Okay. Um, you want to put the next questions or anyone? I mean, there's a
Um,
lot of questions, but I just don't know which one to.
yeah, it's, I mean,
There's one that says it's kind of related. It says by Jad Rahal. It says, "What does a biomedical engineering do in general?" And is making artificial limbs becoming a thing, like replacing some organs with tech or artificial parts. Do you see it?
do you know along where it is, like in the beginning?
You commented right under them. It says you commented we made a video on study tips for BME.
Okay, I'll look for it. You can answer it now.
Okay, wait, I lost the question actually. Oh, I just realized that Austin was replying to some of the people, so it's really cool. Austin went to my BME class. It said, wait, someone asked something, and he said, it's essentially going to depend where you want to go with your BME degree. Going into tissue cell engineering are going to be much less EE heavy than, say, bioinstrumentation. Yeah, I totally agree with that. Okay, so I think that's a hard, like, what does biomedical engineering do in general? I mean, to say a very general statement that encompasses everything about biomedical engineering, I would say you use engineering principles um, to help develop solutions for like medical solutions. You know that's the general overview. Now, with BME, you can get lots of different positions, whether it's in research and development, product development, quality, regulatory affairs, going into the pharmaceutical industry. You know, like there's a lot of different things you can do with it. So even though it is kind of a very specific field, there's still a broad um, set of things that you can do within the field. And it's making artificial limbs becoming a thing. I don't know. I haven't heard of anyone yet myself making artificial. Oh wait, sorry. I read artificial limbs and I don't know why I thought of like they're actually tissue. So artificial can be like prosthetics, right? So yeah, I mean prosthetics is definitely a thing. Replacing some organs with tech or artificial parts. I mean, I think that's been a thing forever. Maybe not necessarily like tissue engineered organs, but if you're thinking of like hip implants, knee implants, you know, those implants are made with like different kinds of materials like metals, ceramics, polymers, and they replace existing bones in our systems. Um, so definitely a thing. Are we starting to replace organs? Yes. I recently saw like the first artificial, I forgot which organ it was specifically, but it's definitely a thing. It's definitely an area of research that's growing. So Um, okay. I'm just gonna see if we have any last questions before we head out. Uh, um, but thank you everyone for joining. I think we usually have podcasts with other people, and I usually just want to ask them questions and don't want to take too much of their time. So I'm really glad that we were able to do this, where like I have all the time in the world to look at your questions and try to answer them. Um, so yeah, thank you all for joining. I think those are all the questions for today. Can't really find any more. Let me see if there's any last comments. No. Okay. Well, thank you all for joining and asking your questions. This was really fun, and I hope you guys were able to get something out either from my answers or from, Daisy's questions, which I think were really good. Alexa said, make a video of a day in the life of a BME during COVID. I should. Yes. I kind of made a video of like the day in the life of the biomedical engineer, but I should definitely do one as a professional. I just don't want to like um record myself while I'm at work, like in the office and things like that. But I should. I think it would be really interesting, especially now that I have two jobs. So that should be fun. Um, so yeah. Sorry, I'm reading something else. Um, okay. So I think again, this is it for this video. Thank you all for joining in asking your questions and just staying tuned. We're almost at 4,000 subscribers, which is crazy. But if you guys have any more questions, make sure to reach out to us on Instagram, Facebook, Twitter, wherever. Also follow our TikTok account. Everything is at the BME Life. Um, we may not always know all the answers, but we'll try our best to advise you in whatever we can. But yeah, I think we're ready to log out. So thank you guys for joining, and we will see you next time. Bye.